Welcome everyone. We are recording this webinar, so if there's anything during this that you're hoping to look back on, we will have that available for you after. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lauren Stanford. I'm PPMD Senior Director of Advocacy, and we have a rock star group of panelists here for you today. And we're just going to give you some background on what we've done for advocacy this year and what we're hoping to do for the rest of the year and into next. So Stephanie, would you mind going to the next slide, please? So this is our agenda. This isn't necessarily the order we'll be doing it in, but here's everyone who's going to be speaking today. It's going to be awesome. We have lots of different programs for you guys to hear some more details about, and I'm really looking forward to it. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to start off with a brief overview of PPMD's advocacy and all the things that we have done. I'm going to break this into federal and state advocacy. So far this year, we had our annual Congressional Advocacy Day, which happens in March, and we had, I believe, the most number of people we've ever had at an advocacy conference. We had about 130 folks there, and 30% of the people who came were brand new attendees. So we're getting new people into the pipeline and interested in advocacy, which we're really excited about. In August, we did some August recess meetings with legislators in their home districts. We used our PAC as a test run for that, and we had a few successful meetings with legislators there just to touch on our federal advocacy priorities and all the things that are going on, and then just continuing advocacy throughout the year on various other things. Next slide, please, Stephanie. So these are our priorities, which some of them we'll get into more detail on in just a moment. But the first one is always congressional appropriations, which is federal funding for research and drug development. The Benefit Act, which I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about if you have been involved in any of our advocacy. And that's really just ensuring that the patient voice is heard in the drug development process. PPMD is the lead on that bill, and we've made a bit of progress with the FDA on that, but we're still hoping to get the bill passed this year. The FAA reauthorization, which our friend Alan is going to present on, so I won't steal his thunder there. And then we've also been doing some background work on the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act, which reduces barriers to employment for folks with disabilities. Next slide, please. We've also been, as I'm sure a lot of you have already heard, working on newborn screening, which Marit, who's on here, is going to present on later. And then just other federal work that we do, which is when we sign on to letters or go to Hill Days or support a bill just around rare disease, disability access to treatments and services, mental health, and telehealth. I think we've been trying to broaden our scope here at PPMD on what we're working on, and I've been working and chatting with the PAC quite a bit about what they would like to see us prioritize in families. So we've been broadening our scope a little bit this year, which is very exciting. Next slide, please, Stephanie. And then this year was the first year that we had our state advocacy pilot. We did it in 8 different states. We did an advocacy day in both Minnesota, which Marit, who's on here, got to attend, and then we also did one in Illinois. And then we did individual outreach in all of these states. And then in Illinois, we actually had a hearing where we got to have families testify at. Next slide, please. Our priorities for state advocacy for our pilot year was introducing a Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Awareness Day in these states. Then, of course, some of the states we were doing newborn screening work on, and then in Illinois specifically, we had a bill where they were trying to direct the Department of Health. So we had, it was a lot of awareness and then some newborn screening and then a little bit of niche stuff for our state advocacy work. Next slide, please. So it's been an eventful year so far. I'm going to try to get through this quickly so that I can have the stars of the show present here. But we actually got some increases in our House and Senate appropriations bills, which Joel is going to get a little more into the DoD increase that we got. We also got all of the report language that we requested included in our House and Senate appropriations bills. So the appropriations and the budget aren't final, but the fact that it's come out of these committees is a really good sign, and we're hopeful and optimistic, and we're going to keep pressuring Congress to pass the budget how we want them to. And then we also had some state advocacy successes. All of our asks passed in Illinois. We had like I mentioned, the Hill Day or the Advocacy Day in Minnesota. And then we did get the Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Day passed there. And then newborn screening legislation passed in Massachusetts just a few weeks ago. So we've had quite a bit of successes. Next slide, please. Okay, and with this, I'm going to pass it over to Joel Wood, who is going to speak a little bit more about our DoD funding and the success we've had there.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It's a privilege to be with you. As noted on the cover slide, I do have our Foundation to Eradicate Duchenne. My son, James, who many of you have met, is 27 years old. He's away at Radford University, his 8th and looks to be final year in college. As Senator Wicker, our champion, says, it's not 8 years of college, it's 4 victory laps. James was diagnosed in 2000 at Children's National Medical Center. We've been very active. While we have our Foundation to Eradicate Duchenne, we very much feel a part of the PPMD family. We're very closely aligned. And grateful for the partnership and for all that the PPMD has done to create out of nothing a very significant advocacy voice that is now used as a model for many other disease groups. Hardly a month goes by when I don't hear from someone who wants to try to emulate what we've done. But we only measure success when we get to cure, and it's been an astonishing year of developments on the genetic front and on several others. We've had a rough division of labor, not exactly sure how this evolved over the years, but where PPMD would support the CDC specific earmark for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and we, the Fed, have sort of taken the lead, and with all the PPMD support for trying to get better investment by the Office of Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs at the Department of Defense. DoD spends far less than NIH, but what I do greatly appreciate about them is that they very much bring a military mindset to their work. I have been very pleased to see the development of last October, when both the European and U.S. authorities finally approved vamorolone, brand name Agamree, which my son is now on, and that product, which took a long time to come to market, but would not have come to fruition were it not for very significant support of the CDMRP. And I hope that it becomes more a part of the standard of care, not only for Duchenne, but for other chronic inflammatory diseases. We've been sort of stuck for the last 5 years or so at $10 million. Now, the fiscal environment is very, very difficult. It's very difficult to even break into those accounts, and I could spend an hour and a half talking about the mysteries of the appropriations process and how CDMRP accounts have come into being. And the simple reality is that the House usually has a lot more named disorders that are eligible for funding, and the Senate always has a much more discrete list. And usually by the time the House and the Senate get together, the top number does tend to prevail, or sometimes they'll sort of divide it up. Until last year, we had always gotten all the CDMRP money through a House appropriations thing that the Senate ultimately conceded to or compromised off of, but we never could quite break into having Duchenne muscular dystrophy specifically identified in the Senate appropriations bill. Thanks to Senator Susan Collins, and frankly, success has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an enemy. He's an orphan, that is, not an enemy. But Senator Collins has been extraordinary. I think many of you know a lot of this is her devotion to the Danger family in Maine, but she is the lead Republican on the Senate Appropriations Committee, which is one of the few committees in the Congress that actually works in a very bipartisan way. You wouldn't know that by all the terrible polarization that seems to exist in Congress, but Senator Collins is highly effective. So we got 10 million in the House, 10 million in the House, so we wound up with 10 million. This year, we got 10 million in the House and we got 12.5 million in the Senate. It is not yet resolved, and this is dependent on the year-end funding matters, which are going to be coming to a head here in the next couple of months. Hopefully, that number will tilt up to the $12.5 million level, and so hopefully this will be something that can give us a little bit more bounce, particularly in light of just pure inflation over the last 5 years and being fairly stagnant on that. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a sense of what we're doing. We need all of you to continue to write, all of your legislators, whether they're members of the Appropriations Committee or not. Lauren is great about always keeping this as a priority. This is one of those things where we throw as much stuff up against the wall and see what will stick. And we are all the time trying to build allies for not only this appropriation, but for the broader policy initiatives that have to do with the MD Care Act and all and the long laundry list of great items that the PPMD is working on. So I'm appreciative of this opportunity. I'm sorry that I'm going to have to bounce off here in a little bit, but I'm eager to look forward to the entire recording of this event. And again, so appreciative of the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Joel. And I know we're all ecstatic over here about the increase to the DoD funding, but I'm glad Joel already has prompted me. I am going to give you all an action alert at the end of this to fill out that urges your members, thanks them for moving this through appropriations, and then telling them to pass the bill with those levels included at the end of the year. So Joel just prompted me right there, which I really appreciate. So next we are going to have His Excellency Tariq Albani, who is going to talk about the work that we've been doing at the UN. So we were talking about domestic stuff. Now let's talk about what we're doing internationally. So with that, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you, everybody, for being here and giving us the time to speak about this. As you know, my partner and wife, Rasha, and I are fathers and mother to a young boy named Abdallah, diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And we have been privileged to be a part of this community and a part of PPMD from day one, from diagnosis. We have joined all the advocacy programs since we moved to the United States to bring better care for our son. In my capacity as the permanent representative of the state of Kuwait to the United Nations, we have took it upon ourselves, with the help of PPMD and the community, to advocate for Duchenne at the international level. So last year, we were very successful in passing the first ever United Nations General Assembly resolution to take note and designate September 7th as the World Duchenne Awareness Day. It was co-sponsored by 128 countries, members of the United Nations, and it was truly a significant step forward in raising global awareness for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. The overwhelming support that we got and the passion that we saw that member states dedicated to, first of all, agreeing on this resolution and actually participating in the social media campaigns commemorating the first anniversary of this in a few days, both nationally in their own countries and here at the United Nations, has been really overwhelming and very satisfying to see. We have also began a concerted campaign to raise awareness about rare disease in general. There are categorizations in international law and in the resolutions of the United Nations for people with disabilities, but not people living with rare disease. So we've taken it upon ourselves to make sure that every resolution in the United Nations that discusses the plight or the need for assistance, awareness, support, whatever it may be, for people living with disabilities, that the phrase people living with rare diseases is also included in those resolutions. The objective is to normalize that category so that people are aware it's not just people living with disabilities, but people living with rare diseases as well, which is a significant number, estimated at 300 million people around the world. We in the United Nations, we work in certain categories and under certain conventions. So one of the major ones is the Commission on the Status of Women, and the Commission on the Status of Women meets annually here in New York in March. And usually there's a final outcome that comes out of these meetings on an annual basis that discusses certain aspects regarding the status of women in general around the world. And now in this year's objective, we are hoping that we include references to rare diseases in this outcome document so that we not only leave the theme of health or concentrate on the theme of health, but also to make sure that the caregivers and other aspects of day-to-day life of people living with Duchenne and rare disease in general are also acknowledged and taken note of in the terminology within the United Nations. So we're also going to ensure that it's addressed in the global policy-making environment. So aligning the UN's broader commitment to inclusivity and leaving no one behind with the concept of rare diseases and particularly people living with Duchenne. So Duchenne advocacy aligns perfectly with the UN's work because I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals passed by the United Nations. There are a set of 17 goals that all countries at the highest level, at the head of state and government level, committed to achieving by the year 2030. And we have been in an upwards trajectory in achieving these goals for the last number of years, and hopefully we can help one another as member states, as countries, reach those goals collectively. Now, the SDGs, for example, SDG 3 is good health and well-being. And it seeks to ensure that people in all around the world, in all countries, have access to good health and well-being. And it emphasizes the importance of ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being for all, particularly those with specific health challenges like Duchenne. So, and SDG 10, Sustainable Development Goal 10, is reduced inequalities. So it aims to reduce inequalities within and among countries, highlighting the need to support vulnerable groups, including those living with rare diseases. And SDG 4 is quality education, and SDG 8 is decent work and economic growth, which are also relevant in the overall scope of people living with Duchenne and underline really the importance of inclusive education and economic opportunities for all, regardless of health conditions. So the UN offers various mechanisms to support advocacy efforts for Duchenne and other rare diseases, including the Human Rights Council and its committees, where issues related to the rights of individuals with disabilities and rare conditions can be addressed. There's also a subset of what we call United Nations Special Rapporteurs, such as those on health and disability rights, who play a pivotal role in raising awareness, ensuring that the voices of people with rare diseases are heard. And we will continue, obviously, to work with those specific special rapporteurs as the state of Kuwait and as advocates for Duchenne to bring awareness to this disease. Ultimately, we would hope that as members of the Human Rights Council ourselves, is to push for a resolution within the Human Rights Council to designate a special rapporteur for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. This is, of course, a long-term goal and requires a lot of preparation and advocacy, but ultimately, that's what we seek to do. And ultimately, as well, in the overall scheme of things within the United Nations, is to categorize people living with rare diseases as as an element of their own. So we have people living with disabilities. We have stakeholders in the UN system, people living with disabilities, youth, and other categories that have their own trajectories within the UN system. And ultimately, we would like the United Nations to recognize people living with rare diseases as its own category, seeking to have a legally binding convention with a subset of standards and laws to be universally implemented at a world scale. So ultimately, this is what we hope to do, but this is a long-term project. We're working with all different organizations like the WHO, the World Health Organization, who can provide technical guidance, data collection, policy recommendations to member states to support member states in addressing rare disease. UNICEF with their focus on children, which aligns with Duchenne advocacy, obviously, because it's diagnosed at an early age, and the children and the disease begins its life there. Also, we're engaging with the UN Youth Envoy, who can also amplify the voices of young people living with Duchenne, ensuring that their perspectives are included in global youth policies as well. We will obviously continue to do this work. It takes the whole community, really, and we've been successful over the last couple of years in bringing this disease in particular, as it exemplifies the world of rare diseases, really, into the forefront, and we hope to make it a launching pad in the global awareness campaign of this disease, what it requires, and how we can ultimately begin to share experiences, information at a global level. I hope I covered the scope of what we have been doing here, and I hope we can continue to depend on the community and seek its support whenever needed here. A lot of people from the community have been generous with their time and their ideas and have participated in events that we hosted here in the United Nations. And I look forward to hosting some more and having more participation by everyone. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'm very, very happy to be with you here.
Thank you so much. And again, we're so grateful that you came here and shared all of the work that you're doing and all the advocacy that you and Rasha are doing to get all this done. And we really appreciate you and your leadership. So thank you for coming to share with us. We greatly appreciate it. Stephanie, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to our friend Alan Chalet. He is a PPMD Adult Advisory Committee member, but he's also I don't want to say your title wrong. Are you the executive director of All Wheels Up or
I'm the vice president
vice
and
president?
founding board member.
Okay, so he's the vice president and founding board member of All Wheels Up, and we've been doing, PPMD has been doing quite a bit of work with Alan around the FAA reauthorization. So now he is going to share some background on what happened this year.
Thanks so much for having me. There's some very impressive people here, and yeah, and it just as a Duchenne patient, it's been just incredible to see. And so, as Lauren was talking about, I'm the vice president of All Wheels Up, and so we're a research and advocacy organization working to make airplanes wheelchair accessible. And on this slide here, you can see like first crash test, we did a proof, there was a proof of concept showing that that it is feasible for wheelchairs to fly in the cabin. Next slide, please. Yeah, so some of the legislation, which has really made so much of the progress happening right now, started several years ago. So in 2018, in the FAA reauthorization, just to build a fund, the FAA for 5 years, there was some pretty big reforms. And just shout out Senator Tammy Duckworth, because she was really responsible for so much of this. And there's great people on Capitol Hill supporting our work. So some of the big things that it caused was, so the biggest thing was it required airlines to report every month how many wheelchairs and scooters they break loose or mishandle. And you can see all of this on the DOT website. And this was just absolutely incredible for seeing just the scale of the damage and just how much there is, because it's roughly like 32 wheelchairs per day are damaged, like during air travel. And yeah, and one of the big things it caused was a required feasibility study of in-cabin wheelchair restraints. And so this was done by the National Academies of Science. And the report, which you can read online, it's the results just came back, I think 2 years ago now. And so proved there's no engineering or design challenges that make it not feasible. And that was just huge for just showing that it is possible, and it's no longer like a theoretical thing. And we can't wait to see the day the first like wheelchair flies on an airplane, and it's happening soon. And so it also created the advisory committee of the air travel needs of passengers with disabilities, and this is comprised of many great advocacy organizations, and so they identify the barriers to travel, and they recommend improvements. And one thing which was just released this year required the DOT to develop an airline passengers with disabilities Bill of Rights. And I have a link right down there, and the DOT website has great resources on all of this, and just like to help people with like disabilities and Duchenne be able to travel and like attend the advocacy conference, and just help all of us. Next slide, please. And so the most recent one was signed in May, and this one was very big, and many people were worried it wouldn't get passed in an election year, and they were able to do it. So it mandates a roadmap on the feasibility of the wheelchairs in the cabin, and also a study on the economic and financial feasibility of a wheelchair spot on airplanes. And there's one of the many reasons why people say it's going to be impossible to make airplanes wheelchair accessible. It's just the cost it's going to take for airlines. I think having the specific numbers will be quite enormous. And but right now they spend like $12 million like a year, like each, like on repairing wheelchairs. And so the big thing that caused is it's going to require airlines to report the cargo hold dimensions of airplanes. And one airline already does this now, where like you can go on the website, you can see the size of the cargo hold of each plane to see that your wheelchair can fit in there. And also required all the airline websites, apps, and kiosks to be accessible. And just because web and app accessibility is enormous, and we want people of all disabilities to be able to travel. And so it mandated training standards for airline personnel and contractors who assist wheelchair users, because right now they're one of the few like industries that works with people with disabilities that have no training, and that's really going to make the whole process for traveling much easier for everyone. And this comes on top of a wheelchair rule that was announced in February, and we were there when Secretary Buttigieg like announced what's in the rule, and so it's going to allow a wheelchair traveler to choose the company that repairs or replaces their wheelchair if it gets mishandled, and the airline will cover the costs as they do now, which is big, because people will be able to use their own wheelchair vendor to like repair their wheelchair instead of one company that right now handles all of this. And it's also going to mandate annual hands-on training for airline staff and contractors who assist passengers and handle their wheelchairs. And it's going to be very big, because if you've ever tried traveling with a wheelchair, like the people are not like trained, and just the whole process could be better for everyone, make it a lot smoother. And it's also going to make it an automatic violation of the Air Carrier Access Act when the wheelchair is mishandled. And so this is the law that was passed before the ADA, and it basically required airplanes to like help passengers with disabilities. So the big thing it did was said airlines have to be able to like allow people with disabilities to fly. And yeah, that was a lot passed in 1986. And yeah, all this is great progress, but a lot more needs to be done. And yeah, we're hoping to work a lot more with PPMD, like you know, and do advocacy. Yeah, feel free to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And It should be at All Wheels Up on everything except Instagram, where it's at All Wheels Up Inc. One word. And definitely subscribe to our mailing list. We're working hard on sending out like a newsletter, like more often about just all the ways people can help. And we're always posting on social media, everything. And we hope to do a lot more next year and in the future. And yeah, feel free to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And I have my email address down there if anyone wants to email me if they have any questions about accessible air travel and anything.
Thank you so much, Alan. And this is really important work, and we're really grateful for you and All Wheels Up's leadership here and on this specifically. And it's an honor and a privilege to help you with this. And it's just so important. And I know the FAA reauthorization this year was a huge win for our community and the rare disease community as a whole. So hopefully we can build more off of that. I know we were really excited about it over here, and you were too. So thank you for coming and giving some more information on it. If we could go to the next slide, please, Stephanie. Now I'm going to pass it over to Marit Sivertson, who is one of the best people in the community, and she's a Duchenne mom and advocate and does a bunch for us. So she's going to give an update on all the newborn screening things.
Well, thank you, Lauren. You are too kind. Thank you to PPMD for having me here today. I live in Minnesota with my husband, James, and our 3 sons. Our oldest, Brecken, is 10 years old and has Duchenne. I've been involved with PPMD's newborn screening efforts and other advocacy initiatives at the state and national level over the years. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon and provide an update to our community on newborn screening for Duchenne. Next slide, please. So each year, there are around 360 babies born with Duchenne in the United States. Without newborn screening, most families are going to start to see and notice symptoms of Duchenne in their child by age 2. However, the average age of diagnosis is not until 5, when children with Duchenne already have significant and irreversible muscle damage. Now, we know that this delay is even longer for families of color and lower socioeconomic status. Many of our families spend years navigating a painful diagnostic odyssey that results in significant emotional and economic impacts, unnecessary testing and harmful treatment interventions, and missed opportunities to participate in clinical trials. There are now 8 FDA-approved treatments for Duchenne, 4 of which are approved for use in infancy, and we have a robust pipeline of very promising new therapies in clinical trials. Newborn screening can eliminate the delay in diagnosis and provide our families the opportunity for treatment years earlier when we know our children have more functional muscle tissue remaining. The FDA-approved screening test for Duchenne, as we know, is safe, it's effective, and it requires just a few extra blood drops from newborns' heels. Next slide, please. Let's turn to an overview of the newborn screening process. Even though we have, every state requires newborn screening, each state manages and administers its newborn screening program through its own public health department. And the newborn screening process in the United States can vary significantly depending on whether a state relies on legislation or an advisory committee to add new conditions to their screening panels. In states where the process is governed by legislation, any changes or addition to the newborn screening panel requires approval from the state legislature. This can be a lengthy process as it involves drafting, proposing, and passing a bill. There is an opportunity, though, for public input during the legislative hearings where healthcare providers, medical experts, and advocates like us can present their case for addition of new conditions. Now, many states across the country utilize a newborn screening advisory committee to oversee the newborn screening program. Advisory committees are typically include healthcare providers, medical experts, and community representatives who evaluate new conditions for inclusion in the screening panel. These committees work very closely with the State Department of Health. They make recommendations based on scientific evidence and public health impact, of course. This process is usually more flexible and can be quicker than the legislative approval. Public input is still a key component, with opportunities for stakeholders to provide feedback. Both of these processes, it's important to understand, aim to ensure that newborn screening panels are comprehensive, they're up to date, but the method of approval can influence the speed and flexibility of adding new conditions. At the federal level, there is a recommended new uniform screening panel referred to as the RUSP. And the RUSP is a list of disorders recommended to states to screen as part of their newborn screening programs by the Advisory Committee on Heritable Disorders in Newborns and Children. I know that's a mouthful, and approved by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. New conditions are nominated to the RUSP by patient organizations like PPMD and are added through science-driven, evidence-based review processes. 12 states have adopted what's called RUSP alignment legislation, and that requires states to screen newborn babies for any disorder on the RUSP, implement a timeline in which the screening has to begin, and then ensure that proper funding and resources are available for all conditions added to the RUSP in the future. In the United States, we have 50% of babies are born in RUSP-aligned states, which is why PPMD has been working so tirelessly to add Duchenne to the RUSP. Next slide, please. Let's discuss the landscape at the state level. In just over a year, Duchenne is now included in state newborn screening panels in 4 states: Ohio, New York, Minnesota, and Massachusetts. Legislation was passed in 3 of these states to add Duchenne to the panels, and in 1 state through the Newborn Screening Advisory Committee process. In Illinois, that's highlighted in orange here, newborn screening legislation has been signed into law, but funding must be included in the state budget for it to be implemented. Legislation to add Duchenne to newborn screening panels has also been introduced in several other states. This is significant progress, in a short period of time for our community, but there's still much work to be done to ensure Duchenne is added to every newborn screening panel in each state across the country. Next slide, please. Turning to the RUSP, in August of 2023, the Advisory Committee on Heritable Disorders in Newborns and Children voted to move the Duchenne package to a more extensive evidence review process. And that evidence review is performed by an external group of experts that analyzes Duchenne newborn screening to better understand the impact of newborn screening for the condition. In advance of this advisory committee May meeting this year, PPMD and the Muscular Dystrophy Association, as the nominators of this Duchenne package, requested that the committee delay the vote on adding Duchenne to the RUSP, as crucial data that may support the package is anticipated to become available for the committee's consideration soon. The request for this delay in vote was approved, and the vote will now take place by May 2025 at the latest. PPMD does have numerous projects underway to collect additional data in support of the nomination package. Next slide, please. We have powerful voices as parents, advocates, and community members in advancing newborn screening for Duchenne across the country. And we need to make ourselves heard at the state and national level. You don't need to be an expert in newborn screening to get involved. Sharing our stories and lived experiences as parents and family members who have loved ones living with Duchenne is what policymakers need and want to hear. This is what we can all do, and PPMD needs our help in making this happen. If you're interested in supporting state and federal newborn screening efforts, scan the QR code on the screen and PPMD will be in touch with you. I also want to mention to support our advocacy efforts, PPMD has just launched a newborn screening action center where you'll find tools you need to be a newborn screening advocate. Scan the QR code as you see on your screen to check out these resources. Let's commit as a community to raising our voice in 2024 and beyond to ensure that Duchenne is added to every newborn screening panel in the country. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today and to PPMD for its decades of advocacy on behalf of all of our families in the community. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marit. And she's right. I think we're going to need everyone's voices to get this moving or get this passed on the federal level and then in other states. But we are happy and excited about the progress that's been made so far. So thank you for presenting on that. We can go to the next slide, Stephanie. And last but certainly not least, we have Marlena McGuire from the CDMRP, which is the DoD program, which is funded under the DoD program that Joel was speaking about earlier. And she's going to give us some background and information on the CDMRP program and the successes that have come out of that. So we know what we're more about what we're advocating so hard for. So I think we can go to the next slide and I can pass it over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I'm really excited to share a little bit about who CDMRP is and the work or the research that the Duchenne's Muscular Dystrophy Research Program, which is one of 35 research programs that the CDMRP manages, and some of the work that's coming out of that. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So as I said, I'll tell you a little bit about CDMRP. CDMRP is an organization where it is part of the Department of Defense. And sort of the vision for this organization is to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And so the approach we take here is really to manage collaborative research. We encourage as much collaboration as possible that will look to discover and develop, as well as deliver healthcare solutions for our service members, their families, veterans, and the American public as a whole. So who is CDMRP? So CDMRP actually started back in 1992, was started by Congress, and it's focused on biomedical research. The organization was started by grassroots advocacy efforts from the breast cancer community. And that was the first research program that CDMRP was asked to manage. And it has grown significantly since then to, as I mentioned earlier, to 35 different research programs. So the type of what are we funding? As mentioned, we're looking to fund innovative and impactful biomedical research. We will fund research all over the world. It is not just in the United States, but also internationally. And how do we do that? Well, the program, we use or follow what is called a two-tier review process to review the grant applications and making decisions on what research projects we're going to fund. And one of the real unique aspects of CDMRP research programs is the involvement of not only the scientists and clinician reviewers, but the consumer reviewers. And you ask, who are consumers? Consumers are actually patient advocates. They are individuals who are living with the particular disease or conditions or injury that the research program is focused on. consumers can also include family members, caretakers, family caretakers, as well as healthcare workers. And the consumers are involved at all levels of our processes, from all levels of the review process, and they have equal vote on what is going to be funded. And consumers are also involved in our process to decide what the strategic direction may be for a particular program. What is it going to focus on? What is, most important that is needed out in the community to address this particular disease, condition, or injury? So we often, we basically we say that the consumers are the true north and foundation of the CDMRP. And of course, why do we want to do that? We're looking to accelerate research to advance cures, as well as improvements and breakthroughs for the diseases and conditions we support. We go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So the specific Duchenne's muscular dystrophy research program, it came into being in fiscal year 2011. But prior to that, CDMRP also managed just individual awards for the muscular dystrophies. You can see that CDMRP was supporting and managing research in the muscular dystrophy starting back as early as 2003. Over the past, it's over 10 years now, we're entering our 13th year, but over the past 13 years, you can see the submissions. We've received over 430 grant submissions, and we've been able to fund 87 awards. So about 20% of the applications that are submitted, we're able to fund. And for fiscal year 24, which we're currently starting to review applications we've received, we have $10 million to invest in research for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And all this goes to sort of the priorities for this program. We look to accelerate discovery and development of therapeutics with that path going towards a clinical application that can be used across the entire lifespan of individuals with Duchenne or Becker muscular dystrophy. Another priority for this program is looking to advance the understanding and the effect of DMD, not only on skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle, but also the bone, the central nervous system, gastrointestinal system, and other sort of understudied systems that we realize are affected by this disease, and get a better understanding and able to address that as we're developing treatments for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And finally, with DMD being considered a rare disease, we certainly want to encourage and do our best to enhance the research capacity for DMD, and bringing researchers into the field and encouraging more scientists, clinicians to focus on this disease and bring their expertise in trying to develop treatments and a cure, ultimately a cure for the disease. We can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So what are some of the research breakthroughs that have made a difference that this program has been involved in? Well, you can see from that investments early on by CDMRP have actually led to, supported the development of a couple of FDA-approved drugs. The most recent one being Agamree 51 for, as a sort of a replacement for the using of steroids to slow the progression of the disease. We also supported some of the early work, research on some of the exon skipping drugs, the Exondys 51 and Viltepso. So again, we're involved very early on in some of these this drug development work. More recently, the program has supported some research where it's you see their tools that are needed in research and in the clinical trials and so forth. And so one of these is actually a research by Craig McDonald's lab and a device they've referred to as the Walk For Me device, that we supported some validation of assessing the motor function of patients wearing this device and monitoring their gait, and all this is necessary when evaluating potential treatments and their effects in patients. Another area in terms of treatments that have moved to clinical trials, we've also supported some microdystrophin gene transfer works and gene therapy that has since moved to clinical trials. So these are some of the work that is already now touching patients. If we move to the next slide, please. Okay, and now some of the impact outcomes from the program that are actually still in research or still, it's being conducted. And the program, we actually fund a variety of stages of research. So we support a lot of early stage research, in particular research that's trying to address a lot of the challenges that have been identified with some of the treatment options that are under development. So for example, we know with gene therapy, there's a lot of sort of immune response sort of that to the gene therapy vectors that create problems. How can we work around that? How can we avoid the problems associated with gene therapy? Also, there projects of so where you're looking to reduce muscle fibrosis. That again is an ongoing problem from the very beginning stages of the disease and throughout the lifetime of the disease. We also support more advanced research or translational research. So it's moving to slowly trying to move it to clinical application. So some of the work is looking at developing non-invasive MRI biomarkers of bone quality. That's one of the projects currently underway, as well as other treatment approaches, more a protein therapeutic. And then finally, there are some clinical trials that the program is supporting. One is actually looking at the effects of daily exercise and combining that with a modified glucocorticoid regimen and develop improving the overall health of individuals with DMD. And then another study that we're supporting is cardiac risk assessment through developing various models using data information from ECG and MRI data. So these are just samples of some of the projects that the DMD-RP, the Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Research Program, is supporting. And finally, not only do we support the research, but we're also involved with the Muscular Dystrophy Coordinating Committee. That is a federal advisory committee that many of you may be familiar with. That was a part of the MD Care Act. This is run by the National Institutes of Health, and we're just one of many federal agencies that participate in the committee. We meet several times a year and have developed an action plan to address the concerns and needs for the muscular dystrophies. So, and that is actually, we're working right now to provide an updated plan for that should be released next year for 2025. So though it may be a program that not many are aware of, the CDMRP and its Duchenne's Muscular Dystrophy Research Program has been around for quite some time, has been involved in very early stages as well as advanced stages of research, and really moving the needle forward, not only in treatments, but ultimately leading to a potential cure for this disease. So I will, at this point, turn it back over to the team. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about the DMD-RP.
Thank you so much. And really important program. And we really appreciate you coming here to shed some more light on exactly what it does and the successes and all that. So thank you for being here. Stephanie, we can go to the next slide, 2 slides actually. So I'm glad that Maria Lena went last, because now I can say that we still I know Joel mentioned that we got some increases in funding from the Appropriations Committee, but none of that is final. So we are still trying to urge Congress to pass the funding levels at what the appropriations put them out as. So if you want to scan this QR code, it'll bring you to an action alert where you can thank the Appropriations Committee for including our requests and increases, and then also urges them to pass the budget with those funding levels at. And like Joel mentioned previously, it's really important that we keep telling Congress how important this is and how much we need these programs funded, because then we're going to get more treatments and more access and all of that. So if you want to fill out that action alert, that would be great. And we'll send this around to you guys after. So, but scan it if you can. And we can go to the next slide. And since we are at time, I'm sorry that we don't have any room for questions, but if you have any, you're welcome to shoot me an email and I can send you in the right direction. And I'm glad that the time was filled with such good information and we got to learn so much about different programs that are going on through advocacy. So and one last thank you to our panelists. I really value and appreciate you being here and sharing with the community. And thanks to everyone who could join us. And you can go, Stephanie, you want to go back to the action alert? Yeah. So yeah, scan that, fill it out, and we'll be in touch if there's anything else that we need from our advocates. But thanks everyone. And I think with that, we can wrap it up.